Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here. And once again, I've just returned home from TCO Performance Center, where the Vikings had one of their longest and most aggressive practices of the year. And they will have a day off tomorrow. So they were in full pads, all out, a serious battle today between the offense and the defense. So we have to start, of course, in the place that we begin every single show, which is how did JJ McCarthy look? And the answer, I think, might be with a lot of caveats to it that it was not an incredible bounce back day from yesterday. It wasn't the hopes and dreams magical QB1 superstar type of day after a bad practice yesterday that maybe you were dreaming of. But I thought it was a practice that had some ups and downs for JJ McCarthy, similar to yesterday. He has not had a practice where I have left thinking, oh my gosh, they are in trouble. But these last two, we have seen the defense, and even going back to 2 days ago, where they had their first padded practice at the end, and it was a really, really ugly situational drill. Well, there was some of that today as well. So I thought he started out the practice pretty good, 7-on-7s, getting some throws in. And throughout the day, it was another situation where the defense was pretty darn fantastic. So let's go through that. And then I've got some JJ McCarthy for you guys to listen to because he spoke with us today. Matt Daniels did as well, and the owner of the Minnesota Vikings. And I got something special for you there, a question that I asked Mark Wilf that I know you guys have been dying to know. So that's a little later in the show. But let's go through this a little bit with McCarthy. Once again, when it came to throws over the middle, he was on point and hit several strong throws over the middle of the field. One at the beginning of practice to Jalen Naylor. That was your typical drop back, hit the back foot, let it go, on point, bang, there's a completion. And there was one a little bit later in the day where he rolled out and he perfectly found TJ Hawkinson, where he dropped the ball up over the top of Hawkinson. He was on the move. It was under pressure, where I think it was pressure over the right tackle. He scrambled out and just let it go perfectly. Now, the defense was yelling, it was a sack. It was a sack. But it was one of those, oh, yeah, like JJ McCarthy wants to be a playmaker and throw on the move and make plays out of structure, which he's had plenty of opportunities to practice when the pressure comes of scrambling out and throwing. So there were a few good plays, including a touchdown in the red zone to Jordan Addison that came across the middle. And I think that, it's easy to kind of get lost in some of the plays that did not go his way and forget the ones that were really good and really well executed. So there was a number of those today. But the defense, once again, in an 11-on-11, got 2 sacks on JJ McCarthy, and both of them were pretty instant pressures. Now, I'm sure the question is, wait a minute, this rebuilt offensive line, aren't they supposed to be good? And they aren't complete yet, that's for sure. And I think they will be good. Fries is just coming back. Jackson is still a rookie, and there's some Darisaw news that we need to talk about as well. But this defensive line is causing so many problems, and so is Brian Flores. This was probably the first time where, in Rocky 4, where it's become kind of a meme where they zoom in on the guy and he yells, throw in the dang towel. There were a couple of times today where I thought to Brian Flores, I wanted to wave it and say, throw in the dang towel, Brian Flores. Stop sending some of this stuff, because they were creating a lot of pressures, got multiple sacks on McCarthy. And then two of his worst plays of the day both came with him trying to play out of structure, where one of them was a rollout to his right and he's looking down the field. It actually reminded me of the interception that he threw last year, where if you are a college quarterback and you roll out and you heave it up to the field and you're a great team and the other team is bad and your receiver's just going to moss the guy, well, that's going to work out just fine. But in the NFL, everybody's really good at football. So McCarthy rolled out, tried to kind of take a shot to the corner of the end zone, didn't quite put the right trajectory on it, and Jay Ward jumped underneath it and picked it off. I think that Jay Ward has looked pretty good, by the way, so far, getting a lot of reps out there in camp, but that was not what they were looking for. And maybe it's an arm punt, it's a 40-yard throw that you want to take a shot down the field anyway, but you never want to underthrow one, throw an interception. And so his throwing while scrambling has been kind of, I would say, a little bit up and down, a little bit spotty, maybe at times. And he had another play later in the practice on the final drive where he's rolling out and he could run for a first down or run for a couple yards and keep the drive going, and instead kind of turns back, trying to keep his eyes up, which I think is a really good thing for JJ McCarthy, keeping his eyes downfield, trying to be a playmaker, but then threw it across his body, which, sorry, I know that that still brings up some bad memories. The words throws across his body for Minnesota Vikings fans, but he did that and it bounced off of Aaron Jones's hands up in the air, almost an interception. And these are the things that JJ McCarthy is learning on a daily basis. And I think all reports from the last 3 days of practice are going to say the same thing, that it was not a smooth practice, that his accuracy was off at times. And there were a couple times where I thought he did look a little bit shook by the Vikings defense and threw passes more inaccurately than I would have expected from him, or maybe just didn't get the ball out on time, or maybe threw it a little bit too early, or maybe escaped the pocket a little bit too early. But all of this is a learning process for JJ McCarthy, that now you go back into the film room and look at those throws and go, okay, that's one that in the NFL you're not going to be able to make. And you definitely are not going to throw back across your body unless you are Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen only. Maybe Lamar can get away with it from time to time. Very few other guys want to be doing that. Just take what's there for you. And his overall command of the offense was really good through the first couple of days, but it also is very hard to command an offense when there is as much pressure as there is. Also, at the same time, I'm sure that Brian Flores would say, well, I think you're going to face some football teams on the other side that get pressures and throw deception at you, and you have to learn it. This is the part of training camp that I have typically felt like quarterbacks look the worst through all the years that I've covered, whether it was Case Keenum and Sam Bradford in 2017, whether it was Kirk throughout the years, because there's a lot of learning that's gone on and not a lot of reps that has actually happened. But when you think about this defense, how many guys are actually even new to this defense? Okay, you've got Isaiah Rodgers, Hargrave, Allen, but that's really it. So everybody else knows the defense inside and out. And Brian Flores can call whatever the heck he wants in a practice against McCarthy, and he could push the limits there. And JJ McCarthy, just has to try to work through it, even though he has not worked with this offense before. And the other caveat you could throw out there is that he has not had Justin Jefferson. So there is a back and forth, though, a little bit when it comes to the JJ McCarthy discussion, which is, well, how quick is he going to be able to get it? If he's not really getting it so far, and there's major ups and downs of here's a great throw, here's a great rep, and then here is a really rough throw and a really rough rep. Well, when should we expect it to smooth out? How do we know at what point should it look really, really good? And I think that answer comes in a couple of weeks of just stacking up these padded practices, stacking up 11 on 11, seeing more things from Brian Flores, to where, all right, they always say don't make the same mistakes twice. Well, the same thing would go for JJ McCarthy. And this is what you get with a young quarterback that has a really good arm and I think a really good head on his shoulders, and is also being asked to take on a lot here early in practice. And maybe all of us through the first few practices went, whoa, I guess he's just got it. Like, look at all these, downfield throws. Look at the touch that he's putting on the football and all those sorts of things. And then, maybe we have to realize, all right, he is still making progress here in training camp. And I don't think that it was until probably the second or third week, even last year, where I felt like McCarthy was coming along in camp. And then Kevin O'Connell said that he felt like he was a franchise quarterback. But last year, at this point with Sam Darnold, he had just had his first and second padded practice, and they hadn't gone all that well. And that's why I want to make sure to always say that this is going to be a progression for JJ McCarthy. It's not going to come easily or simply. If this was easy, a lot more people would play in the NFL. So it is not easy. And this defense, I mean, the schedule might prevent them from having the best defense in the NFL, but it's got the talent to have the best defense in the NFL. And it's so interesting when I listen to other people, outside of here talk about, well, the secondary or this guy was injured or that guy was injured. But when you put the accumulation of these players on the field with elite talent at the edge rusher position, top notch talent inside, top-notch talent at the linebacker position in Blake Cashman, who's just phenomenal. Harrison Smith is still here, might go to the Hall of Fame one day. Isaiah Rodgers has looked good. We've talked a lot about Jeff Okuda, but I mean, we haven't talked much about Byron Murphy, who's been fantastic so far in this training camp. This is a top to bottom defense that is absolutely loaded with a defensive coordinator who's doing all sorts of stuff out there that I don't know every defensive coordinator is doing through 7 days. So I would put like maybe a panic meter on it and say, hey, it's a 2 on the panic meter out of 10 about JJ McCarthy's last couple of practices not being as sharp as you would want them to be. And also, when he is getting sacked like this, that is a hard thing. I mean, yes, he needs to get rid of the football, but there have been a handful that are such immediate losses that he does not have a chance to get the ball out. And at that point, you also have to maybe have a conversation after a practice like this with Brian Flores of, hey, maybe we're going to get more 2s versus 1s, or maybe we're going to do a little more just straight up normal coverages, straight up, pass rush, and not have all this deception, because it's making it really difficult for McCarthy. And the number of defenses that are going to be better and more talented and more complex than Brian Flores is this year is very low. So they need to make more progress with the offense, that they can't just keep getting blitzed and sacked. And they are going to have to sort some of that out because it's a copycat league. So I do go a little bit back and forth on how to evaluate these practices. If they had no good moments from McCarthy, I would think it was kind of concerning. But the fact that it had 4 or 5 really good moments and then 4 or 5 really bad moments, I think, yeah, that's about how it goes for a first year starting quarterback in the very early days of training camp. I think McCarthy in his comments mentioned something about it being the dog days of camp. For me, the dog days are like August 12th. And that's when you've just been doing this and doing this and doing this over and over and over. And at that point, that's when it should start to look much more routine, much more solid and locked in. At about the time that it's the end of camp, where the fans aren't there anymore, and where you've seen a couple of preseason games and so forth. And then the big moment of the summer for JJ McCarthy will not come until the middle of August when we get to those joint practices. So they have really 2 weeks here to look at this as a starting point of, all right, McCarthy has been really on point sometimes and really off other times. How can you even that out from a practice to practice, especially when you're going against one of the best defenses in the NFL? And sometimes, it went this way with Zimmer defenses when you had Everson Griffin and you had Daniil Hunter. And there were a couple of years, even, with Brian Flores last year and 2023, where I remember Kirk being kind of unhappy and having some bad practices because the defense was doing so much in terms of deception before he felt like the offense was ready to take it on. So that's where I stand. There's no real panic here at all about a couple of rough practices for JJ McCarthy. But the one thing that I am curious about is, I don't think that he is a wildly inaccurate quarterback at all, but I think that he has certain areas of his game as far as throwing the football that are very clearly really good and they're in his wheelhouse. And he loves those types of throws every single day. A I don't know the footwork exactly, but call it like a 7-step drop with timing with a deep in pattern, and he hits it just right on the money. Where the defense is dropping deep, say they're playing like a cover 4 and they're dropping deep, and then they run a concept where somebody comes across the middle or it's a deep crosser, and he's just really good at stepping and throwing. But there are other throws that I think are a little more on the inconsistent side. When he makes a decision a little bit late and can't get his feet quite set underneath him, it's been a little inaccurate. And I think that's why the red zone has been so problematic. So I want to give you some JJ McCarthy on these things, including what he had to say about that really rough red zone period. And I thought today's was not much better. He did throw a touchdown today, but it was not much better in terms of the red zone. And this is where the decisions just have to be made so much quicker than on a deep in breaking route where you're hitting the footwork that you've practiced over and over and over and over again. So when they hit something that's supposed to be really quick in the red zone, it's, oh, I have to react really, really fast and snap a throw out there. That's where the accuracy has suffered a bit. So here's JJ McCarthy talking about the struggle of some of the red zone drills.
And along those lines, the red zone yesterday, like what was your take about how that went?
Missing by inches, and that's what happens when you're down in the red zone. You got to be detail oriented and really specific with where you're putting the ball. But there was a lot of good things on tape, and at the end of the day, those concepts are going to be crucial when we get down there. Just the rhythm and timing of everything. So just more great reps to put under my belt and the rest of the guys.
6 practices in, how would you sum up your progress so far, JJ?
I would sum it up to, just more and more comfortable in this system, just attacking the process of the pre-snap, the cadences, knowing where everyone's at. And, something I really wanted to work on was just those layered balls and being able to find my touch again. And I feel like I made some significant strides with that part of my game. And, at the end of the day, I feel like we're getting, 2% better every single day. And that's all that matters.
Well, not 1% better, but officially 2. Is that analytics? 2% better every day. But I mean, so you can hear him talk about that where it was close misses and getting the right rhythm and timing. He said, I think it's making the right reactions along with having your feet still in place or being able to throw without having a solid base, which I think is one of the hardest things in the NFL, where you can't just always have your feet locked underneath you. And it takes a lot of reps to doing that to understand how to do it and to master it. And that's where JJ McCarthy is having some young quarterback moments. And whether these become problematic is whether they improve or they get fixed over a long period of time. So when they do a red zone in 3 or 4 days from now, that's where you want to see improvement from where he was now. That's what's really going to tell us where JJ McCarthy truly stands, is using the last couple of practices as a baseline to the accuracy has not really been there. He has struggled to deal with a lot of the pressure. So how does he grow from this? Does he start to identify some of the rushes a little bit better and hit the hot reads before the rush even has a chance? Because it's hard to know. We always want to blame the offensive line, of course, for any pressure, but it's hard to know which one of these plays that maybe if he had seen a pressure coming, that he could have gotten the ball out instantly rather than having to take a sack and trying to keep his eyes downfield. And that's the balance that he's trying to learn. He was also asked about what the most challenging parts or the biggest difference between playing in this offense and what he has had previously in his career, and he gave an interesting answer there.
Jay, can you talk a little bit about how much more you have to manage in the huddle and line of scrimmage than when you were in college, when you were at Michigan?
It definitely a step up. We did a lot at Michigan with just, the play calls and being able to check things at the line. But this takes it to a whole nother level with KO's offense. And, he says the hardest part about playing the quarterback position is in this offense is pre-snap. After post-snap, the rest takes care of itself. But just being able to identify coverage, remember the motions, make the protection calls, and, react once the ball hits your hands. He does a great job of just, talking through that process pre-snap and just going out there and making it as effortless as possible.
JJ, how do you go about that part of learning the protections, whether it's meeting with Ryan Kelly, meeting with coaches? What's your process for learning how to set protections and command it?
We do a lot of meeting time. We go over it a lot in the quarterback room and just always being vocal with Ryan Kelly and the rest of the guys, and, just lunch period in the locker room. And we do a lot of protection walkthrough stuff. So they really make it super organic to really be on the same page.
Well, it's great to talk about it in a meeting room. It's a lot harder to see it. So that will be the true test here of JJ McCarthy. But it did get me thinking about what we should expect from him accuracy wise in the regular season. There have been plenty of quarterbacks in the NFL that are successful that do not have every single play perfect, flawless accuracy. And if you think about, Aaron Rodgers in his prime is as accurate as anyone has ever thrown the football. But how many quarterbacks have we seen win a lot of games that do throw balls in the dirt occasionally, that do airmail balls occasionally? I mean, even think about, and I know that this is a different kind of quarterback, but the guy who won the Super Bowl in the NFC, Jalen Hurts, can be inconsistent at times. Great receivers make up for it. You hope that the misses don't turn into interceptions and decision making ends up being good enough to keep the ball in play and keep the offense moving and make a handful of really good throws per game that are going to move the needle. But I do think, just in general, overall, it is very difficult to go from having this tendency to throw rockets and this struggle a little bit with layering the football and things like that. At this point in the game, there's not a lot you can do to totally change that. But the biggest thing that he has to be better with is, I think, one is just identifying when that pressure is going to be there immediately. But when there are some pressured reps, he can't let those carry over to some other reps that then turn into inaccurate throws because he's getting shaken up a little bit by the defense. And then that's the biggest thing. As far as the accuracy discussion is a difficult one, because when I think, all think of accuracy, we think of kind of Drew Brees and the most, pristine quarterbacks. And we think of Madden, where if on Madden, if you have 95 accuracy, every throw is going to be great. If you have 75 accuracy, you're going to spray some, and the video game is going to screw up some of the throws that you make toward accurate or toward open guys. And it's kind of more of this like rating type of thing. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as in, some guys are going to have better touch than others. Some are going to throw certain other throws. And another part of it is just how well you know the plays and how well you see the defense can play significantly into accuracy. Throwing to the right spots can be accuracy. If you make the right read, if you see the play the right way, and just throw it to a certain spot, even if it's not on the letter, on the bullseye, if it's the right spot, the receiver is going to make an adjustment and go catch it, especially when it's a Minnesota Vikings wide receiver. So that's kind of the point. But you are asking a guy who has not thrown a lot of footballs, which I, brought up at times, to quickly improve some of this stuff. And so I think that we have to be ready to be patient at times as this process goes forward. There's going to be a throw to a guy that's open that just airmails. There's going to be a throw that's missed that maybe Sam Darnold wouldn't have last year, that maybe Kirk Cousins wouldn't have last year. But it's really about him being able to come back the next play and make the next play. And it's sometimes I do think he's going to have to use his legs, and he is going to have to scramble when pressure comes if he's struggling on a particular day. The other part of it is, the running game looked fantastic today. It really looked excellent. Ty Chandler had some big runs. Jordan Mason had a huge run in a situational drill that was like a final drive type of drill. And I have thought and I'm going to stay with this, that Kevin O'Connell is going to lean into the passing game. He's going to lean into JJ McCarthy. You learn this whole offense, no matter how many bumps along the road there are, because O'Connell pushed through those bumps in the road with Kirk Cousins. You remember early on in training camp 2022, there were some major issues with Kirk Cousins learning the offense. And last year with Darnold, there were some very ugly practices. So he's gonna push through. But in those moments where the accuracy may be up and down, this is where I think they have a much better run game. And a major part of that is one of the bigger developments from today's practice, which is that Christian Darrisaw was in at left tackle on 11 on 11 drills. Now, I don't have an exact count of how many plays he was in. I think that he got into 3 different drills for a handful of plays, 11 on 11, full speed, and I think he looked good from the start. They ran a ball over the left side right when he got in there, and he pushed Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins right out of the way, and it was like, welcome back, CD. Christian Darrisaw is one of the most valuable players, I would argue, in the National Football League. He is a dominant run blocker. He is tremendously talented in terms of slowing an opposing pass rush. You could put him on an island against any player in the NFL. And also, there is a confidence that goes along with having Christian Darrisaw there. Does it mean for sure he's coming back week 1? That I don't know. But as far as checking another major box of getting out there for full speed reps, Christian Darrisaw did that today. So that is going to be good for JJ McCarthy practicing going forward. And we'll see about the next steps for Christian Darrisaw. But that was really big for him to actually get back into real practices. So let me get you a few more sound things, and then we can talk about your questions, comments, thoughts, and feelings. But the big headline of the day was the defense is still absolutely dominating. And I also should mention, by the way, that all the quarterbacks threw interceptions today. Just as far as other notes goes, there were a lot of notes on other interceptions. Brett Rippon in a red zone drill threw the ball directly to Byron Murphy. And if you're wondering how confident the Minnesota Vikings defense feels right now, Murphy picked it off in the end zone, ran it all the way to the other end zone, and they did a full celebration that probably would have gotten Byron Murphy fined. So they are feeling really good about themselves. Also, Dwight McGlothern, another day with an interception. That is 3 straight days with picks. And kind of goes back to last year. Some guys just hunt the football, and that's what Theo Jackson did, and he got an interception at the end of practice from Max Brosmer. Was notable that Brosmer got more reps 11 on 11 than Brett Rippon. I don't know if Brett Rippon got any 11 on 11, but Brosmer did get a couple, and then it's kind of a bad pick at the end to Theo Jackson, but they're making plays in that secondary. Also, Ty Felton had a good catch today. Rondale Moore made a couple of plays. I actually had a conversation with Rondale for about 15 minutes after practice that's going to be for an article over at purpleinsider.football. So make sure that you go check that out. And you can read a little more about Rondale Moore becoming a complete wide receiver, coming back from his injury and his attitude and all those things. But that conversation was really good. But I noticed Rondale today, and he keeps making steps. I don't know if I mentioned this, but Mekhi Blackmon got in at the end on the first team. And that was the first time that we've seen him on the first team. I think that Blackmon has looked ever so slightly tentative, like has not looked quite as aggressive so far as I would have expected from him. And I think that goes to coming off of the ACL injury. And just to bring up, some good plays by JJ McCarthy when they were doing the final drill, because they went after Blackmon, just popped into my mind. When they were doing the final drive, there were a couple of crossing routes that were kind of underneath that McCarthy found in rhythm, perfect timing, bang, bang, first down, got the drive going that they ultimately would have kicked a field goal. They didn't do kicking today, but they would have. And scored at the end of a game. So it was kind of a final drive drill that they were able to have some success with. But I thought that Blackmon was just a little bit less physical with the receiver than I thought, which maybe is just coming along off that ACL injury. So as far as Ty Felton, he's made a good catch or two every single day. I think he's coming along. I still don't expect Ty Felton to be a huge part of this offense right away. It's still Lucky Jackson, who is getting almost all of the first team reps with Justin Jefferson down. So until we see a big change there, I'm probably going to think that Ty Felton is in the development phase of his career, to put it that way, that he's a guy that they're looking forward to for next year and beyond, that is just starting to get his feet underneath him. And I think will be a part of the kick return game, as he was mentioned today by Matt Daniels, and he'll be a part of the punt gunner, but I don't think he's quite ready as a complete wide receiver just yet. Okay, so let's hear from Matt Daniels, because I asked him, or someone asked him, might have been me, about Rondale Moore and the punt returning, because Rondale Moore did take the first punt returning reps for the Vikings yesterday. So here's Matt Daniels.
Yeah, what have you seen so far from Rondale Moore's punt returner? Obviously did it early in his career, but not so much in recent years.
Yeah, for sure. Rondale hasn't done it since 2021. But it's good to see, obviously he's coming back from a major injury with a dislocated kneecap, and the explosion is still there, the confidence is there, the ability to track it and catch it is still there, which you're really excited about. You talk about a guy who can race for the edge, really press the perimeter of defenses and cover teams. I think he's just got to get back into the field of things, and we really got to start trying to get him some live reps just in terms of the decision making. Understanding, if I got a short ball, do I feel good about navigating through traffic to go get it? Whereas, petering it, getting bodies away from it, that way we're not preventing any type of muffs or touch balls on our end. So that's really kind of where he's at right now. But love the confidence that he's having. He's coming up, meeting every other day, just kind of going over how can we handle certain situations, what does he like in terms of, schematics of where he wants to go with the football, and really trying to understand and getting to know and build a good relationship and connection with, who's going to be blocking for him out there. So we're in a really, really good spot right now.
We're not in a really good spot with the airplanes that are always flying over. But so there you go. Rondale Moore, at least, is taking the first punt attempts, and they're going to have to get into games to the point where we see how that's really going to play out. There was a lot of Miles Price discussion as well, a name drop of Silas Bolden, but not the most confident name drop. So that one, I think, is Rondale Moore's job to probably lose as the punt returner, and then wide receiver depth. And I can't tell right now if the reason that Lucky Jackson has taken all these reps for the Justin Jefferson spot is because Lucky just knows the offense better than anyone else. I mean, at this point, Lucky could probably teach the offense. But is it because of that, or is it because he's legitimately ahead of Rondale Moore and Ty Felton? Felton, I don't think, is ready for this. It's a really complicated offense for receivers. So I expect that that is the reason why, is just because Lucky Jackson knows a lot better. But as far as he's played, I think Lucky has been fine. If they're going to go into, say, week one without Jordan Addison, is Jefferson and Naylor, who's having a great camp, by the way. Jalen Naylor is really having this entire offseason like a step up type of offseason. So I think that Naylor can handle a lot of the same things that Jordan Addison does if they start the season that way. I also think that they use 12 personnel a lot. And you know who else looks good all the time is Josh Oliver. He's just a really, really good football player who I would, if the apocalypse was coming and I needed somebody to protect me, I might pick Josh Oliver, because he's just so big and so strong, but he also has got good hands. So they can do that and use Hockenson as more of a slot type of wide receiver and not have to use a lot of the other receivers. But the depth is a little bit, just a little bit suspect at the moment, unless we see a big step from Rondale Moore and a big step from Ty Felton. But at very least, maybe the punt returning. So also the owner of the football team, Mark Wilf, had a chance to talk with us today. Lucky him, eh? We had a chance to talk with him, I should say. And Mark Wilf talked a lot today about Kwesi adofo-mensah, Kevin O'Connell, the state of the franchise, and things like that. So let me bring you my first question to him, which was about the free agents that they were able to bring in here. I think that we have gotten to the point where we kind of take for granted a little bit about the team is stacked and they got a bunch of free agents and everybody wants to sign here. Okay, but what about tight end 3? That's kind of how we are sometimes, but pull back and look at how much talent was brought here. It's definitely been a reminder on a daily basis on defense how many players they've been able to bring as the defense has dominated so far the early part of training camp. So I asked Mark about why it is that players seem to want to come to Minnesota and give such high grades to the ownership and coaching.
Mark, a lot of the free agents who signed here cited the NFLPA survey as one of the reasons they were interested in the Vikings. They graded ownership and coaching very high. What do you think that you've done from an ownership perspective to make players feel like this is a place they want to come?
Well, I think we have a mindset of, again, I think Coach O'Connell personifies that so well, of just bringing the kind of culture where we care about our players first and foremost. And yes, the facilities are important, the building is important, but it's also about the people. And I think from every coach, every scout, every business staff person here, there's a sense that we want to build a team and a culture that everyone wants to be around. And that could be having family lounges at our stadium, or the kind of facilities where our players feel welcome and that they can hone their craft and perfect their skills. Those are the kind of things that we want to keep promoting, and the fact that's recognized is great. But again, that's what we're about.
Mark Wilf there, the ownership sometimes around the league gets a lot of attention for the owners that are not good, the ones that are cheap and don't pay their players, the ones that do press conferences after every game and also don't pay players, or no, wait, end up overpaying because they just screw around. That would be the Dallas Cowboys. With the Vikings, I mean, this group has figured out a way to create an organization that players want to be part of really consistently. And it starts with TCO Performance Center, but also I think when they hired Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, they had that in mind. Like under Mike Zimmer, this was not a place where if you called your friend who played for the Vikings and said, "Hey, should I come sign there?" They'd be like, "No, it's a nightmare here." Right. That's I think something that has changed so much over the last couple of years. And Mark talked about that because, of course, they've signed O'Connell and Kwesi to extensions, which made for a less sexy press conference than when we could ask him, "When are you going to sign Kwesi to an extension?" But an interesting answer here from Mark Wilf when he was asked about how they've come along. And then keep your ears on the rest of this because I ask a question here that I think is one of the best questions I've ever asked in my journalistic career. So we got Alec Lewis's question about Kwesi and I think it was about Kwesi, and he made it about Kevin as well. And then I'm very proud of myself today for this question because when you go to journalism school, they tell you to hold people accountable and be fearless, and that was me here. So here's the clip.
With Kwesi, what has stood out just over the last 3 years, just about your communication with him? What has impressed you the most over time?
Well, he came out of the blocks with an incredibly great mindset, great mind, and I think we've seen tremendous growth actually as well. People forget how young both Kevin and Kwesi are, and the way they've grown together in this last 3 years has been super impressive, and I think that's been part of it. And like I said before, communication, collaboration, the kind of people that he's put around him. And so I think all in all, we work very closely to build this thing, and the results will hopefully prove out.
All right, a couple more for Jared's induction.
I will not. Yeah.
Mark, have you heard anything from the league about bringing back the pregame fire? I know that's something fans ask us a lot about the Dragon. I didn't know if that's something you're looking for.
We focus on making sure our pregame experiences. I mean, we have one of the highest marks in terms of number of fans in the seats when we have kickoff because people want to come see our pregame show, get all psyched up for the game, and so our Dragon's going strong. And whether it's fire or smoke or whatever comes out, I know our players will be jumping out of there and our fans will be really cheering hard.
You're welcome. You're welcome for trying to get answers about the Dragon at US Bank Stadium and why the Minnesota Vikings and nobody else in the NFL can use fire anymore. And if you had been to US Bank Stadium, and of course, I cover every game there, the fire shooting out of the dragon is one of the coolest things that I have ever seen in any pregame situation, any concert, any sporting event. They roll out the big dragon and it shoots a ball of flames into the air. And even in the press box, like you could feel the wave of heat hit you. It was cool. And then the Tennessee Titans, I think in 2021, maybe 2019, must have, I think it was 21. They had a speaker catch on fire. Okay, random. It's the Titans Stadium, which is a disaster. And Roger Goodell banned all pregame pyrotechnics. If you go to a Target Center basketball game, much smaller arena, pyrotechnics. I went to Kendrick Lamar at US Bank Stadium, and he has fire shooting out of the stage. And yet, no pyrotechnics in the NFL. So I asked Mark, didn't sound like he's gotten any answers. I know he talked about how great it, yeah, it's cool to shoot. Look, they have an amazing experience there. Before the game, they do the best, some of the best that I've seen in the NFL, but we all want the fire to return. And I think, you know what? If you watch Mark's face, if you see his face, and I know he didn't see the question coming, but if you see his face, he kind of gives a look where he's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I want the fire back as well. So Mark Wilf and I together, hand in hand, will fight this fight to get Vikings fans what they deserve. And the dragon will no longer be silenced someday. So, anyway, it was one of those where, hey, the press conference is basically over. No one was going to ask another question. And it's been on my mind for a couple years. By the way, huge shout out to RA for the $50 super chat. Wow. Thank you so much, RA. I really appreciate you and all of you who have jumped in and watched and supported the show. We've seen pretty enormous growth just since the beginning of training camp. I've loved doing these live shows. You guys ask awesome questions, great responses. It's been really fun to do these. So thank you so much for all the support from all of you. And now would be the portion of the show to get into some of your questions and show you a little bit of, hang on. I'm supposed to have the audio on. There we go. Okay. So this is punt returning, by the way. They did a lot of this. So I got some video of this, but I'll start answering questions now with some B-roll running in the back. We'll start with Brett, who said, with Darrisaw returning to 11 on 11 today, does this guarantee him of playing week 1 against the Chicago Bears? I would not say that. No, I do not think that it guarantees that he will play. I think that it significantly increases the chances that he will play. Because if we didn't see him till almost, the joint practices or something like that, then I would think, oh, that's kind of a short turnaround from the first time that he practiced. But now, we're talking about 5 or 6 weeks before he has to get out there. And I'm trying to remember about TJ Hawkinson when he first began full practice, how many weeks it was. I want to say it was about 4 or 5 weeks that TJ Hawkinson needed before he could get back. So there was some discussion, could he get back for the Lions game? And then it wasn't until the Rams game. So maybe it was 3 or 4 weeks after he started really practicing. Now, it was not a full practice either for Darrisaw, and he's still got a giant thing on his leg that he's dragging around out there, but big progress. And if he can get out there for week 1, it's going to be huge. But even if it's week 2, then, look, if you get 16 instead of 17 games out of one of the best players in the NFL, that's fine. But I don't know if we can quite say that it guarantees him. It gives him a chance. Put it that way. It gives him a chance. Zoomer Kev, daily aura check. Yeah. I think the aura overall, if I'm using it correctly, or vibe, I don't know when vibe became aura, but whatever. I think it's fine. I think if you play on the defensive side, you are sitting there feeling like, wow, this thing is going to be good, because you just have so much violence on this defense, but also so much intelligence these guys have been in this defense. And even if it's Hargrave or Allen, new guys to the defense, they've been in the NFL for a long time. Isaiah Rodgers has been with a couple different teams in the NFL as well. I don't think it's a difficult adjustment period for some of these guys into this defense because they are veteran players. And there's just, and then when you see a player like Dallas Turner taking a big step forward, a lot of really good things are happening on the defensive side. So that vibe is amazing. I think if you're on the offense, you're probably not ready to be concerned, but maybe a little frustrated. That's where I would land on the aura check is you'd have to have some really catastrophic practices to be worried about JJ McCarthy, to be worried about the offense. And you cannot say enough that number 18 is not practicing. The best player on the entire team is not there. So if he was, I think JJ McCarthy might be doing a little bit better because that's going to be the first guy that he looks at on every single play. I also think that you see sometimes some of Jordan Addison's weaknesses when it comes to physical play, when these receivers are getting their hands on him and so forth. And we saw it a little bit from Okudah today, who had a great rep against Addison where he really got his hands on him and Addison wasn't able to run through it. And Jefferson is a different level. He's a different level from almost everyone in the league. So you're not freaking out, but you are probably walking out of practice going, okay, well, tomorrow's another day and you have to go back and review everything and learn from it. There's some of the accuracy stuff that I think is just not going to change because it's so hard to grow during a season of being accurate. And there's some stuff with accuracy that just is never going to be perfect. Like think about golfing. Like there are golfers who are the best in the world that are on the secondary tour that are just never going to, they could practice just as much as everybody else. They're never going to be Tiger Woods. It might be that way with McCarthy, where I don't think he's ever going to be Aaron Rodgers with his accuracy, but I think once he starts to understand how to deal with some of these pressures and where the ball needs to go and getting it out a little bit faster, that it will look more accurate and it will look better just because the play is working the way that it's supposed to be working. Matt D says, other than McCarthy not sailing through camp with ease, what is the biggest worry so far in camp? Seems like it's mostly good news that we're hearing. I mean, I would agree with that. The biggest worry, I think, until today would have been Christian Darrisaw hadn't gotten in yet, but then Christian Darrisaw was in. Before that, it would have been that Will Fries hadn't gotten in there, but then Will Fries gets in. I mean, maybe I don't want to pretend that I can totally properly evaluate a left guard from where I stand. It's a long way away. There's a lot of chaos, and I don't get 15 different looks at it to see in slow motion. But it might be a little bit that you have a rookie left guard and that could cause some issues. But he's also going against Hargrave and Allen at times, and those guys are really nasty and good. There really isn't. I mean, there truly isn't something else that I would say, I'm a little worried about. Maybe just the fact that when you're talking about the depth at wide receiver, you're really banking on somebody emerging between Ty Felton, Rondale Moore, or anybody else, or it's going to be Lucky Jackson. And as much as I love and respect any guy who went to the XFL, he went to the spring league and fought his way here. If you're going into week one with Lucky Jackson as your wide receiver 3, that's not exactly where you wanted to be. I think you would have wanted Rondale Moore, Ty Felton to be that guy. So we're going to have to see that. But the next most concerning thing that I thought of was, well, I'm not really sure about this punt return situation. I thought of tight end 3 because you guys have talked about it. Neither punter looked very good. The other, like that's where we're at because things have really looked pretty solid, and backup quarterback's a concern. I think Sam Howell's looked much better over the last 2 days. He's looked much more like a regular backup and not like someone who has no idea where to throw the football. So as far as actual concerns go, there really hasn't been a whole heck of a lot. KFOW77, if he's struggling and getting better, that's what I expect. But if he's struggling and just not getting better, then it's a problem. Totally. And we need more practices and we need more plays to get a true sample size on is he getting better or is he not getting better? Because there is a cliche in player development that progress is not linear, which means that you don't just get a little bit better every single day. So today I'm an 82 on Madden, and tomorrow I'm an 83, and tomorrow I'm 84. Now, I loved when you could develop Madden players through those training camp drills, but that's not exactly how it works. So on Saturday, JJ McCarthy really found some stuff and was fantastic. But then it's the NFL, so you get knocked back down a peg when they're implementing more and they're having you drink out of a fire hose and they're asking you to read and identify defenses and rushes that most quarterbacks in the NFL struggle to handle. And that's why, by the way, that this show gives a lot of respect to Jared Goff when he tears up Brian Flores' defense. Imagine how much you have to know and how good you have to be to play against this defense. But those are things that come with experience and come with development. So I expect them to get better. I expect the comfort to increase. I expect Jefferson to come back and him to look better. Where I would be really worried is if JJ McCarthy had practices where nothing went right. I mean, today, the situational drill, they produced points. He had a couple of passes to start the drill and really just made a bad decision in trying to throw back across his body, but had a nice scramble that would have taken him for close to a first down. Like, I've seen him do a lot of good things still, even in these days that are bad. And having seen completely bad practices in the past where nothing works, like, this is typical. If it wasn't typical, that's where I would start to get concerned. But this is typical for the earliest days of the pads coming on. So I'm not shocked by a couple of practices that are a little rough. I just think with McCarthy, he's got to think a little bit more about those decisions when he's on the run. And he has to identify a little bit better when pressures are coming quickly and just get rid of the football because he's got a running back or two who can catch it. He's got TJ Hawkinson, and they're going to go downfield still. Like, this is an observation of mine through practice. I hope you guys are enjoying the video of these punt returns. I enjoyed shooting them. But he's going to have to throw the football down the field. And there are going to be deep drops, and there's going to be decisions, a lot of them that he has to make really quickly of whether to get rid of it underneath to Hawkinson or take the shot down the field. Like, that's this offense. Kevin O'Connell designed it last year with JJ McCarthy's arm in mind. He didn't design an offense to be the 2019 Vikings where they run the ball and they have play action and they throw screens and that's it. And that means going through the hard stuff like this to get to the other side. And a good example of it is, Kirk Cousins said that in 2022, it took him a while into that season to really get it. Now, I think that O'Connell pared it back a little bit for Darnold, and he might do that here as well. But it took him a little while to get it. But once he got it, then it really clicked for Cousins. And I think that that's what they're looking to do with McCarthy is that there's just a lot going on, and he's looking to get to a point where it really clicks. Let's see. Tricky Ricky Stern says, how has McCarthy's athleticism look compared to other quarterbacks you've watched in camp? It's so Sam Darnold had a very unique type of athleticism. He was kind of a freight train. Like, he was so big, and when you saw him move, because he was thick and big chest and huge shoulders, like, he's just a giant kind of dude. Even though his height isn't crazy, he's really big. And so when he would take off, it would be like a guy rumbling. Like, he was fast and big, and he could also throw on the run kind of crazy. They just let that thing absolutely rip. So I wouldn't say it's the same as Sam Darnold, but it's the same kind of vibe of, like, this is a guy who is not going to destroy you with his running ability. And he had a nice run today, but he's not going to destroy teams with his running ability. What he is going to be able to do is get a first down when you need him to get a first down. He's fast enough to do that. He's quick. He can definitely outrun people. But he's not going to just run away like from a Blake Cashman. Like, if him and Blake Cashman are kind of one-on-one, he's going to get taken down. Cashman is faster. So he's not a difference maker necessarily with his legs, but it's good enough. And I do think that he could throw the ball on the run, but it's about deciding kind of when and how to throw the ball on the run of, is this the right time to try to rip one while I'm scrambling? Is this the right time to turn back and look for somebody open, or just take that first down that's there? So it's not wild difference making freakish speed. And we know that his size is probably average for a starting quarterback, but he can get those first downs when you need him to. So if we were doing an over under for rushing yards, maybe it's like 300 at the end of the day, that it's, maybe it's like 300 total rushing yards, because he is good at that in terms of his scrambling ability. Let me scroll a little bit here. Ty D. Skoll says, I think our defense is close enough to the top defense that some poor play should be expected for a guy with as few snaps as he has had. That's right. And that's kind of my main theme of the last two nights here is, well, let's talk about the specifics of what it's looked like and where he needs to go. But let's not act like this is a catastrophe that he's had two practices with some serious pressure and some imperfections when it comes to the accuracy. But maybe it does cause us to have a conversation, at least right now. And this could totally change in the next couple days. Like a conversation about expectations for JJ McCarthy and how much they're going to put on him, which I think is part of KOC's strategy. That I think part of KOC's strategy is to put as much on the quarterback as he possibly can and then pare back, not baby step, but rather, here's the whole thing. Now, what do we need to take out for it to work for you? Here's the entire offense, every check, every change, every motion, every read. But when we start to get through the middle of camp, then we understand, all right, this is what works for you and this is what does not work for you. That's what I suspect about how KOC is doing this in terms of the teaching process for JJ McCarthy. And somebody with the team said to me sometime, I don't know, in the spring about McCarthy, they made the point that his brain has a lot of knowledge and they've downloaded a lot of knowledge about this offense over the last 2 years, but the actual making his body do the stuff is nowhere near how much information he knows in his head. So he's trying to take the information in his head and make his body do it. And that's a process in itself. And I think that that's where some of those throws that do go inaccurate kind of comes from of, well, he knows that that was the right place to put the football, but he couldn't quite get it there on the right timing or whatever it might be as of right now. So that's why I don't even like to use the word struggling, because then it's like, oh, JJ's struggling. Like, well, JJ's learning, and learning doesn't always look pretty. Any of you, you guys have heard over the last couple of shows, I played you a little bit of me playing guitar. I've made a joke to my wife that I will only learn a new song when she's out of the house, because it sounds so horrible about the first 50 times you try it and then you get it. And any of you who have ever learned anything know this. If you try to learn how to play chess, you get destroyed the first 50 times and then you figure it out. I think there's some of that going on here, where it's the first times that he's doing a lot of this, the first time he's really in there seeing the defense do this to him, or the first time he's seeing his left tackle or right tackle get beat immediately and then having to react. Because last year's training camp, while it was really good for him, he was playing with the twos. And I don't think that he was facing the entire defense like he has been so far. So that's why we need to give it time. Let's see. Never played Madden says, any sign the KOC will employ a quick game to counter the overwhelming pass rush. I don't think that this offense is going to be any different than it was last year. Now, how they call plays might be a little different, because it might be, okay, JJ is really good with this thing that maybe Sam Darnold was not good at. And that might make for some different looks. And I know that them going out and getting Rondale Moore and getting Ty Felton, they want to have that dynamic there to run a jet sweep, to run a bubble screen. I've seen them working quite a bit on the screen game, actually, which is something we've complained about for years. And I think it did take a step forward last year in the screen game. I think they've worked a lot on it. There's been a couple of blitzes that they've run right into with those screens. Yes, I think the answer is yes, but it's still a KOC offense. So when you watch them practice their routes, there's three guys going deep down the field. That's who they are. That's who they're going to be. And I think the idea for Kevin O'Connell is this kid can throw the ball really hard. He's got the physical talent to do it, to put it in windows and to rip it in between defenders and to get it there in a hurry, get the ball on his receivers in a hurry. So that's what we're going to do. We're not going to sit here and throw a bunch of screens and check downs when you have that kind of arm, even if it goes along with some bad things. That's always been KOC, though. It's part of his philosophy. He's got a bit of a home runner strikeout philosophy. And last year, that was with Sam Darnold, and they struck out at the end, but they certainly hit a lot of home runs throughout the regular season. Kyle says, thoughts on who is in the early lead of the Mr. Mankato race? Anyone stand out to you? I do wonder what everybody else thinks about Dwight McGlothern being in the conversation because he's probably ineligible just by having played last year. But I kind of want him in the conversation because he keeps making so many plays. If he is not in that discussion, then Zamiah Vaughn, just based purely on the rep count. I also think someone like Levi Drake Rodriguez probably can't count. He got into a game last year. He was on the active roster. So you can't include that guy, even if he's kind of breaking out in Mr. Mankato fashion. It's really about this year, this camp. And I'll throw a dark horse at you. Zamiah Vaughn's just played so many reps with the second team that I think he's going to get a lot of chances. The dark horse is Miles Price. I could see Miles Price, who's looked pretty good on the punt returning and is kind of an undersized like playmaker type. I could see Miles Price having a couple of really good preseason games and start to catch the attention. He might be what we thought Silas Bolden was going to be, but Bolden also had a really good route and a catch today in one-on-ones. There just hasn't been a lot of opportunities for those guys who are the undrafted free agents to get on the field for a lot of reps. I mean, it is all about JJ McCarthy out there. So preseason could determine it. But the fact that Vaughn is playing with the second team across from Jeff Okudah, who's playing first team when they're in nickel and second team, and he's playing ahead of Dwight McGlothern. Like at the moment, that is the most interesting undrafted free agent or late round guy. Although Kobe King today did step up and smack somebody, and I thought that guy makes a couple of plays. He could be a fan favorite pretty quickly. Connor says, how has Mekhi Blackman been? I haven't heard anything about him. He's mostly been playing with the twos, and he has looked to me like he is still trying to come back from that injury. Like the explosiveness doesn't quite look the same. The aggression, he was a very aggressive player. The aggression hasn't looked the same, but the fact that he got first team reps today is very significant. That is a battle. That is a real battle between Mekhi Blackman and Jeff Okudah. And those two are going to go day in and day out. And ultimately they'll decide who they feel more comfortable with. But I think the fact that Blackman worked in today with the ones sort of tells you where he's at. Now, I think they did that to give a little bit of a rest. It might have been to give a little bit of rest to Byron Murphy, who had a great day, but he was in there nonetheless. And he was in there also when Rodgers was out. So he's had some opportunities so far. I think that Okudah has looked very good. As in this environment, Okudah is going to look good. I mean, with his talent and his strength, this is a situation where he's going to look like a freak, and he does. But as they go along and put in more plays and more plays, and they go back and they watch every single rep, not just where the football went, they're going to, I think, get a good feeling. But I think Blackman still needs to take another step in this camp in order to really be in that discussion. If they were playing today, it would be Jeff Okudah. Jeremiah says, don't remember, did Sam have the same sort of problem last season as far as with this defense and early in camp? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. After 2 or 3 padded practices. Now I do remember Sam Darnold taking kind of a big step after the first padded practice that had gone terribly, but it was a lot of up and down early on. They are like, this is so early. This is before we've even hit July. And I think in the next 2 weeks, that's where you expect it to come together. You expect the offense to look like everybody's on the same page. But it does throw a pretty big wrench in to not have Jefferson. And I don't mean to keep going back to that, but he is kind of the best player in the league that's not a quarterback. So it matters that Justin Jefferson hasn't been there. In fact, JJ McCarthy was asked about Jefferson not practicing and what they're still able to do with each other chemistry wise.
JJ, with Jefferson's injury, where do you feel like your chemistry was at with him before he went down, and then how do you work on that when he's hurt?
I feel like we were in a really great spot. Spent a lot of time in the off season, just getting on the same page. He's a different receiver. He moves in different ways, and just being able to really get reps and reps and reps with him is huge. And unfortunately, he's down with a little bit of soreness, but at the end of the day, we're going to pick up right where we left off. We're still communicating off the field, and, he's still communicating with me on the field on how he would run certain routes and where the ball placement would be. So I think it's in a really good spot.
He's verbal like that with you guys from the sidelines.
I love it. He's one of the leaders on our team, does a tremendous job of just always being interactive and in it. A lot of those guys, they can sometimes hide away in the training room and kind of do their own thing, but you really feel his presence out there, and just being able to, pick his brain next to him in the locker room and out on the field, it's really awesome.
It is the best airport in the country. It's just so happens to be right next to where we do these press conferences. But there you heard JJ McCarthy talking about, Jefferson being engaged in the practice and how important that is and how they got reps in the offseason. But they're not going to perform as well against the first team defense when they don't have Justin Jefferson, and especially the way he practices, which is 110% all the time. I think when he comes back, that's another thing that we'll see the offense start to take another step forward. But, when they downplay Jefferson being out and it's, hey, it's fine and they'll figure it out as far as chemistry goes. And he's really good. And I agree with most of that, but they need him out there and they need to get on the same page. And I feel that his presence was really missed over these last couple of days. I missed the question about Blackman and his participation. It's been in full. Yeah, it's been in full. He hasn't missed any reps as recovery days or anything like that. It's just been him practicing. Hanson family says, do we need to focus on being built to run the ball in the playoffs, or is it better to be dynamic and match up to your opponent? January at Philly is much different weather than a game against Detroit. No, and that goes back to something that actually Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said in his press conference, where he said, we want to be able to win a lot of different kinds of fights, where if this is a knockdown drag out, it's going to be 17-14 type of game. You want to be able to get the ball with, 14 minutes to go in the fourth quarter and take 10 minutes off because you're grinding it down with Jordan Mason. That's why I really think that Jordan Mason is a major swing player to this offense, because he just gives them such a different dynamic. Guys, okay, yeah, these players are good defenders. They've been around. They're not terrified of Jordan Mason, but I don't think they like it. I think they're willing to tackle Jordan Mason, but I don't think they enjoy it. He just brings so much power and is quicker than you would think for a guy who's this big. He is looked, and they're keeping the workload off of Aaron Jones. But I wouldn't be terribly surprised based on what we've seen if it ends up being closer to 50-50. And again, maybe that's an overreaction. We're only 7 days in. Maybe it's an overreaction to just seeing how good Jordan Mason has looked. But if he's going to run like this, they are going to get a lot of yardage out of him. And so, yeah, they could lean into that a little bit more. Oh, I'm sorry. That question disappeared on me. The next question. But they could lean into the run a little bit more, especially early in the season. The question, and I'm sorry that I lost it on the side there, was about the decision making. Oh, here it is from XPOZE. Is he at least making the right reads? JJ McCarthy. That is a little hard to know for me, whether he's making the right reads. A lot of the way that I think of that is I figure that out is I'll look over at KOC. And KOC, is he, running over to McCarthy to have a meeting, or is he sitting there looking pretty happy? And I think that a lot of times the reads are fine and the ball is coming out, but it's when there's confusion, it's when there's pressure that maybe he doesn't know just yet where that's supposed to go, to where the hot read is, or how to identify quite the pressure yet, or who's getting beat, because things are moving really fast in there. And for a guy who hasn't played that much football, then yeah, I mean, it's going to be something that he has to adjust and adapt to, is when that pressure is coming. But another point is that there's not too many quarterbacks who are great under pressure. I think largely the ball is going where it's supposed to go. I don't see a lot of stoppages in the plays. I don't see a lot of Kevin O'Connell running up to him and pointing at the video board that they have. Not to say that he's perfect with this, because he still, I think, has a long way to go. But I haven't felt like, oh my gosh, he has nowhere to go with the football, or he has no idea where he's going. And you can really see that when someone is totally lost and has no idea where that ball is supposed to go. That's not JJ McCarthy. In fact, I think he's, over the last 2 days, he's found a lot of passes that were there and just missed them. I mean, if he hits that red zone drill that we talked a lot about, if he is a little bit sharper on his timing, the ball went to the right spot. It went to the corner to Addison. It went over the middle to Josh Oliver, or at least my interpretation from the sideline is that it looked like the right spot, or he found someone open. We could put it that way. And that the throw just wasn't there. And that happened with a Jalen Naylor play in the red zone today. The throw just wasn't there. And I think some of it's just being shook a little bit. Some of it is just still getting the accuracy up to the point where he wants it to be and where he had it last year. Maybe early in camp, and just going back to last year's camp, he played so well in that preseason game that we forgot that there are bumps along the road. And now with every missed pass, it's whoa, what's going on over there? And I think I'm about a week and a half away from saying what's going on over there if we see inaccuracies. And I got a really great look at a bust quarterback in joint practices when the Vikings practiced against Trey Lance. And I couldn't believe how much Trey Lance struggled to get the football out. Didn't seem like it had any timing to it. And that's going to be a really great test for JJ McCarthy. And they're going to have to push through no matter what. But trying to get him to a point where they reach those joint practices and he feels comfortable, confident, ready to go, knows where to go with the football. And so I'm sure that the reads are not perfect by any means. I've felt like it's been two main issues. One is that he's just missed dudes that are open. There's just too many footballs hitting the ground so far, and then too many sacks because the offensive line has just been beat by these freaky defensive players. But also, if you're the quarterback and you're supposed to set the protection, you're working with Ryan Kelly to do it. And if you set it wrong, and that's how you get free pressures as well. Zoomer Kev says, what percentage of these training camp sacks could he escape realistically? Yeah, maybe a couple. They try to factor that in. Usually if they call it a sack, it's pretty clear sack where somebody gets very close to getting a hand on him. But, that's tough to say. That's tough to figure. I mean, a couple, but usually if there's any chance that it could be something he escapes, he'll scramble and then try to make a play, which is how he ended up with some of his negative plays today. XPOZE says, was the accuracy this questionable during last year's training camp? He took really big steps forward last year from mini camp to training camp. Early on in camp, though, I think that there were the same sort of thing. It really wasn't with McCarthy until right up before the preseason game. And this is what I mean about how there's almost some lore that's been built about this preseason game and what came right before it, and then Kevin O'Connell's comments right after it. It almost kind of got built up to, well, he's just never going to have a bad practice ever again. And he has the offense locked down. He's QB1. He's a superstar. Like, off we go. And we forget that every training camp has its bad practices and has its inaccurate throws and has its things that you have to work on. So the early part of camp, I mean, I remember they didn't give him any first team reps last year, which tells you something. He was only about to get them just before he got hurt. And then he was going to go have some first team reps in the practice against the Browns. And I don't think he would have gotten the QB1 job if he was great, but he was going to get some first team reps there. But that just tells you, think about when the joint practices were, right toward the end of the summer after the first preseason game, in between there. And that's how long it took for us to feel like JJ McCarthy had taken a big step and was throwing accurately and had gotten his confidence together. It's a lot of new and it's a lot of pressure, and we can make McCarthy in our minds superhuman when it comes to that. But nobody's superhuman when it comes to facing Grenard, Van Ginkel, Turner, Hargrave, Allen, like these guys coming after you at full speed. There's going to be, those moments where he's not going to look like a megastar quarterback as of right now. And then we'll see how it develops from there. Nick says accuracy also requires the receiver to be where they need to be. Being bull rush may completely kill any chance of timing. Well, that's true. That is true. Is that it does hurt the timing of the entire offense when you have these pass rushes, but also some of the physical play on the outsides when you don't have Jefferson. The plays are designed to go to Justin Jefferson. Like, breaking news here, they're all designed to go to Justin Jefferson. And the timing of Jefferson running a certain route versus Addison or versus Jalen Naylor, it's just different. It's not going to be the same. And so he started to get going in practice, and then you have that taken away from you. It's going to throw stuff off. Now you've got to make up for that. It's the NFL. Like Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison, there might be some injuries and there might be a suspension, and like, you got to figure it out. There's no excuses. It's just maybe an explanation for some of the struggles with that, with accuracy, with timing, missing Jordan Addison by just a little, missing Naylor, that kind of thing. There's no, yeah, but it hasn't been great. It hasn't been, wow, he's just throwing darts all over, but it also hasn't been so poor that I would start to lose my mind. Let's see. Traveler says, want to know how Ty is doing. Ty Felton is mixing in with the first team. I noticed that when they took, let's see, what was it? A 12 personnel look with the second team. So 2 tight ends. The first 2 wide receivers were Jay Sean Jones and Ty Felton, and Rondale Moore came in a little bit later. Now, I don't know if that says anything or not, but they've been getting Felton a lot of action. He's been out there a lot. He's been with the first team a handful of times, but he has been getting a lot of work. He's been getting a fair number of targets. He's been getting a ton of special teams work. I just think that we'll have to be patient with Ty Felton. And somebody mentioned an arc of like a KJ Osborne type of arc, and I think that that is realistic for him. Not 0 catches in the first year like it was for KJ Osborne, but maybe developing throughout the first year and in his first training camp. And I see speed, I see some ball tracking ability, but I think that he needs to get bigger. And I think that he's going to have to learn a lot when it comes to route running and stuff like that against these types of levels of players. So Felton is more of, hey, if Jalen Naylor goes and gets $15 million in free agency after catching 48 passes, you're the next man up and you've got a year under your belt. So you're not drafting someone next year. Like, this was a draft pick that had the future in mind and maybe special teams and maybe a role to adapt into, but that's really it for Felton. So I want to, limit expectations there. Maybe he'll overcome those expectations, but just give him time. I think he's going to need time and patience. But so far, I haven't seen any issues. I think he looks physically impressive. It's just getting down the details is going to take some time. Nigel says, where do you see Dallas Turner's role this year? Well, the way that Dallas Turner is playing, I see his role as something on every play they could get him out there for. It might be a lot of different types of things that he does. It may be switching in for Andrew Van Ginkel or Jonathan Grenard for one play, and then all 3 of them are on the field for the next play. And I know that, I saw maybe a comment on yesterday's show where I had said, like, kind of taking what Patrick Jones did last year. And it was, hey, if you're going to spend the first round pick on him, he can't be Patrick Jones. But when you actually go back and look at how much Patrick Jones played, it was a lot. And they also didn't bring back Jihad Ward either. There's snaps there to be had. And there's probably 5 or 6 different ways they could do this. on the left side, on the right side, filling in, moving Van Ginkel over into a linebacker spot, moving Turner into a linebacker spot, sliding Grenard on a third down over a guard and having a 5-man front with Turner off the edge, dropping him back, sending him on blitzes from the second level. Like, there's a lot of stuff that they can do with this guy. And that's why they wanted, I think in part, not to overdo it last year early on with him and also give him time. Like we were just talking about with Felton. Like, this is not a team that just shoves young guys out there and says, you'll be fine. Unless it's Ivan Pace, but that guy is nuts. He's different. But aside from that, like, look around. Donovan Jackson's starting, but aside from that, there aren't too many guys that are just tossed in there. And a guard, you have to play. It's not like you can rotate a guard. So I really, really, really like where Donovan Jackson is at right now. And I think there's a ton of opportunities to play him in different ways. I would put it right now at about 600 snaps for Dallas Turner. And that's assuming that everybody else is healthy. If someone gets hurt, you just feel a lot better about him going in there. Nick, should we be concerned about how many practices Isaiah Rodgers is missing early into camp? He was back today. I think it was just 2. So no, I don't think so. I think it was just 2 practices. One of those soreness types of things. Hard to say exactly what soreness is. I did think of the Jimmy Butler, general soreness is what, is that what's being referenced? Probably not. KOC was not here yet for general soreness, was he? I don't think so. So maybe it's just that's just something that they say when they don't really want to say where the guy was sore, but it wasn't a serious injury. He was back. He was fine. He was out there practicing today. So he just missed 2, and then some other guys got some opportunities to jump in. All right. Kurt says this team is actually going to have a few players that Okay, I think I should be back. Are we back now? Guys? Let me know. Am I still muted or not? I think I'm good. Now. Am I good? Can somebody give me a thumbs up here to let me know that we're good? And then I will explain what happened. Okay. I need a thumbs up here from somebody to let me know that we are still rolling here on the show, because I can hear myself. But okay, we're good now. Okay, thanks, guys. So let me explain what just happened, which was Buddy the dog who is new to the household, came downstairs with a toy of his and was throwing it everywhere. And Buddy the Greyhound tossed it underneath where I'm sitting and ripped out all the wires for the microphone. So I apologize for that, but and I thank you for all hanging with me there. But Buddy the dog is still figuring out everything in the household. He has only been here for just a couple of days, so we'll give him a little bit of leeway for that. And maybe he learned his lesson. But I heard a big wild screech, and then he spilled my Diet Dr. Pepper and everything here in the studio. So I forget what question I was in the middle of answering, but we're all good. Nothing seemed to have been broken. Just the microphone got taken out of its little, whatever, the plugged into the USB-C thing. So all right. Yeah, the dog ate the homework. No, he's sitting right here and he looks like he looks like he's guilty. He looks like he feels very guilty for what he did. Thank you, RA. Five on the super chat for Buddy. Okay, so I'll get back. I'll get back to the questions now. Sorry if I missed some figuring out where I was in the scroll, but that's a first. That is a first on the show. That he's a very enthusiastic dog. He's been great for the household. He's playing in the backyard. He's having a fun time. And I think that he probably, because my wife is gone, broadcasting the Lynx game tonight. So I think that he got maybe a little bit bored of me sitting here and not paying any attention to him and decided to bring me a toy to show me, hey, it's time to play and time for us to have fun together. And yeah, just got a little enthusiastic there. So we're good. We're good. Thank you all for your patience with that. I'll have to upload some pictures of Buddy the dog to show you a little bit more, although he has peeked his nose in here a little bit. But let me get back to the football questions now. Matt says McGlothern should be in. He didn't exactly have a role last year. So I'm very interested by this with Dwight McGlothern's situation. He has interceptions in 3 straight days. Last year, he was an interception machine when it came to training camp. And I think he even had a couple in preseason. And yet it hasn't been his job so far of that CB3 playing with the second team full time. He's been in there when they have played in the nickel with the second team, but has not been in as the first guy out there. That's actually been Zamiah Vaughn. And it might be that they just feel a little stronger about Zamiah Vaughn's down to down type of performance versus Dwight McGlothern going for interceptions. Or it could just be that they want to get Zamiah Vaughn more reps because they want to see if they want to keep him. Like sometimes these things are a little hard to read when it comes to the depth. So they're not going to mess around when it comes to the first team. Like the first team is the first team. But when it comes to the backups, they may mix in rotations to get guys more reps because they want to learn about them and not necessarily because that's the depth chart. And we can take our best guesses from the sideline. But as of right now, if you're doing that, if you're making that guess from the sideline, you would put Zamiah Vaughn ahead of McGlothern, despite the fact that he's had multiple interceptions here over the last few days. Skull Vikings, do the Vikings add Asante Samuel Jr.? I don't think so at this moment. I remember we had this discussion about when will we know if the cornerback group is good or not? When will we know if they're going to be comfortable with what they have? And health is always going to play into this. But as of right now, it seems to me that they're comfortable with the cornerback group that they have, with Okudah and Blackman battling it out, with the way that Vaughn has come along, with the way that McGlothern has played. So I don't see them going out right away and getting Asante Samuel. Don't know about his health either, since nobody's picked him up. But even Rasul Douglas, if they really felt like they needed him, or did he sign? I thought he was visiting somebody. I don't know if he actually signed or not, but because Jack Jones did. I still think it's going to be a little bit longer in order to assess this, but right now I think they feel pretty good. The other part is the defensive line is getting so much pressure that can you really tell? And the coaches are going to also see a lot of other stuff like are they running the right routes? They're going to see the one-on-ones in the details of, hey, this wasn't your technique, or this was your technique that you're supposed to run in our defense. That's a little more than just the 11 on 11 or 7-on-7 performance. But again, as of right now, I felt pretty good about the cornerback group, so I don't think they have to go out and get somebody else. They will if they need to, but I don't think so at this moment. Hatfield Barbecue. Do you see a scenario where Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason split carries 50-50? Oh, yeah, I do. There is a scenario that could happen. There is definitely a scenario, and it's just based on performance entirely. If they go into the first game against Chicago and say they want to really try to establish the run, a rarity in the O'Connell era, but they really want to establish the run. They want to get after it. They want to show Chicago what's what. They want to make it easier for JJ McCarthy to run some play action. And they go out there, and Jordan Mason just is averaging 5 yards a carry. He's running over dudes. He's fitting great into the scheme and all that. And Aaron Jones, I think we know, is just always going to be a good NFL player as long as he doesn't lose a step. That could result in using a lot of Jordan Mason, and it could result in Jordan Mason being much more of a RB1A than just RB1 if they start the season out and they give him a lot of carries and he performs like he did last year for San Francisco. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's not impossible that Mason could end up with more carries depending on how they look, but let's not downplay Aaron Jones. He was very, very good last year, and he's a guy who ages extremely well. So I would not be surprised if Jones still gets more because he's more of a pass catcher, because he is, more of a pass protector, I think, or at least has a lot more career reps in doing it than Jordan Mason. Pass protection is extremely challenging, and Aaron Jones has done it 100 times, where Jordan Mason's probably only got a handful of reps. I was thinking about this because he didn't have a lot of pass protection reps last year. And I was like, wonder why that is. And I think the first assumption would be, well, he must not have been good at it. But I think the right assumption is that, oh, yeah, they run an offense in San Francisco with Christian McCaffrey. That's who it's designed for. You're not having Christian McCaffrey pass block. You're having him go out to catch passes. So they didn't have Jordan Mason pass protecting a lot. If he can play an all around role, then it is possible he could be in there maybe just as much as Aaron Jones and give them something they haven't had in a duo in a long time. What is this? Says JJ went against these guys last year, should be a further along after sitting and studying all season. We drafted Will Levis 2.0. I do not think you drafted Will Levis 2.0. I guess there's always going to be the one person in the chat who comes in and says McCarthy sucks. And congratulations to you. I guess you're that person tonight. But as far as be further along, I think asking him to be further along as QB1 against the first team facing the entire breadth of the defense, which is now a defense that is actually a lot better after a year where he could not practice for the entire year. And we just completed the second padded practice. Before you start declaring him to be Will Levis 2.0, I think you have to really put a lot of consideration into where we actually are in this training camp. And he's also looked very, very good at times in these practices that have not gone as well because of the pressure that he's faced and some of the inaccuracy. But the main thing here is it is 2 padded practices in. We have not hit August yet. This is still the figuring things out phase, and he is figuring it out for the first time as actually running the first team offense. He didn't do that last year. This is how it works with young quarterbacks. It has been a while for you guys. I mean, think about how long it has been for Minnesota Vikings fans since you've really seen a young quarterback develop. You have to go back to 2014, 2015 with Teddy Bridgewater. In between that, Kellen Mond wasn't a prospect, it turned out, and Kirk is a veteran. Sam Darnold was a veteran. Sam Bradford was a veteran. Case Keenum was a veteran. It's been a while since there was a young quarterback that had some ups and downs. And with Teddy Bridgewater, it was that way too. With Teddy Bridgewater, there were games where he threw for 90 yards. There were some games where he was absolutely phenomenal. And it's a very different team, I think, because the offense is so much more and the offensive line is so much better than it was in 2015, but there may be some comparable there of the defense is absolutely stacked and the quarterback is going to have his great moments and maybe some down moments as well. But if you're the person who's trying to declare what JJ McCarthy is going to be, now I've seen a lot more of them than you have, so I think I would be more qualified, and yet I'm not even close to making a declaration on that. If I was trying to do that right now, I would say that it would look a lot more like Matt Ryan's first year, where he dropped into an absolutely stacked team that was ready to win, and he got them to the playoffs. I think it was at 11 wins, but didn't put up huge numbers, had some ups and downs, but played well enough to win, had a good defense, all that sort of stuff. I know that's going back a little ways, but I don't know about a comparable. Like if he plays like Bo Nix did last year and finishes with 3,800 yards and 29 touchdowns or whatever it was, 28, and they win 10 games or something, and that's how well he plays, and they have a top defense, and this team should have a better running game. Like that's kind of where I got him right now. I have 11 wins instead of 10, but those are kind of the numbers that I have in the ballpark for McCarthy. There are just going to be some of these days where you don't hear it was the greatest practice. Oh, by the way, another thing to note about what we're doing right here is that there has not been a quarterback for the Vikings since Kirk Cousins arrived that I did a nightly analysis and big old breakdown of every single throw that the guy had during the day. I don't think that I even did that in 2018. So you're probably hearing a lot more about, I mean, during the most of the Kirk era, a negative throw in the red zone. I'm not mentioning that after practice. Like, whatever. It's Kirk Cousins. We know what he is. We don't know what JJ McCarthy is. So we're all trying to figure that out together. But it comes along with great power and great responsibility, right? Great interest in JJ McCarthy, but we also have to be responsible about it and give it more time than 2 padded practices and then declaring he's Will Levis. Alex says, when do we start getting worried that Jets isn't out there? The way that they're talking about it, it seems like this is just, they could be not telling the truth, but it seems like it shouldn't be that long that Justin Jefferson is out. I think if he does not practice at all by the end of next week, I would raise an eyebrow. I would raise an eyebrow if he doesn't practice by next week. Like, what is it really just a mild little soreness strain or what? Like, what's happening here? But it doesn't sound like he's going to be out for much longer than that. When O'Connell said I wasn't going to play him in the preseason anyway, I thought, well, there are 3 preseason games. Like, is it going to go for weeks here without Jefferson? You would like to see him back, ideally, now that we've seen this play out. Because my first initial impression was, well, if he's out for the training camp, I don't care. Just make sure he gets in for those 2 weeks where you're actually preparing. But now that I've seen McCarthy and I've seen how the offense looks without him for a couple days, I'd like to get him back in there by the start of not, this week, like next week, the week after next. Is that how you say that? The week after next, if he could start to get in there after the first preseason game, get back into action and get those guys on the same page. So miss some of these early, really physical practices where everybody's super juiced up and is hitting, and Jeff Okuda's a little bit too much early on. Get him out of those practices. That's okay. But eventually, yes, I think in camp, he still does need to return to get on the same page with McCarthy. Brady Pems says, we need an update on Donovan Jackson. Feels like I don't hear much about him. I think the reason that you're not hearing much about him is because it's very hard to evaluate a left guard unless it's going terribly from where we sit. If it's going terribly, then the guy just gets manhandled constantly, and it's pretty easy to see. But as far as the nuances and what he's picking up and what he isn't, now there is a lot of pressure, and that is an issue. So if I had to just fancy a guess, I would say he's having a lot of rookie moments in there as well, especially when he's playing the majority against great players, but also with Justin School to his left, who to me has been the most beat guy. But Andrew Van Ginkel, look, the guy had double-digit sacks. He beat Brian O'Neill a couple times today, and you're like, gosh, that guy's good at football. So there's been a lot of that. I think, and I wouldn't evaluate Donovan Jackson until I see him in a preseason game. I would assume that he's going to play. and just get a look at how he looks in that sort of context, and maybe not playing two of the better players in the NFL at getting after the passer. So far, I would say it looks like he's a starting left guard, but where he stands in his development, I think we've got a long way to go to find out. I know that feels like a cop out, that I should just take a wild swing at it, but I'm not confident in the answer. The other day when I asked Ryan Kelly, he said he's just got to understand the details. He's got to understand that if his tackle does this, then he has to do that. And it's way more complicated than it was in college. So he's got to figure some of that stuff out. But that is kind of a boilerplate for a guard in the NFL anyway. I got to kind of see him in a real game context to get a sense for where he truly stands. I will try on Friday to watch him a little bit more closely. I've just been seeing so much pressure. Sometimes we're going, wait, who had that pressure? Where did that come from? But a lot of it's kind of been with CD out. That's a part of it as well. Black Alt, how do you feel about Zach Moss getting cut? Can't hurt to pick him up. If the Bengals are cutting him, it's kind of my rule when it comes to this kind of thing. If a guy gets cut way early in training camp, something must not be right with that guy. So when it comes to Zach Moss, I really like the way Ty Chandler has looked so far. I know that he's always going to be really fast in training camp, but he's had some nice runs and some explosive looking runs. I I think I know we want changes. I know we want roster moves. I know we want, oh yeah, this guy's out, this guy's in, new guys in here. It's a kicker slash punter. It's a tight end that had 18 catches 1 year, so he's gonna find it here. Like, we love that, but I don't. Has Zach Moss ever really been good? I don't know. I don't think so. They should probably just stick with Ty Chandler, and if they get to the end of practice, okay, or the end of training camp and don't like where they're at, then okay, you can go out and look. But as of right now, I think they're in a fine place in the backfield. And if the worst guy that you have is someone who can get in games and has been explosive and has shown he can kick return and all that sort of thing, then that's okay. That's an RB3 in the league, and you hope that you're not having to play him a ton. Joshua says, I feel like Brosmer will be a sneaky good backup with a year of experience under his belt to learn the system. I think so too. And Brosmer had a couple of rookie moments today, threw a pretty rough interception over the middle of the field on a play that I think looked to me just like a misread or some deception from the defense, and threw it right to somebody. I forget. It might have been Theo Jackson that picked it off, kind of just threw it right to him. But he also has had some really good plays. And if the rep count means anything, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But Brett Rippon has not gotten almost any 11 on 11s, and threw today in a red zone about the worst interception you could throw. Brosmer has looked, I think, pretty solid as a guy who's just coming into the league, and he definitely gets the ball out. He seems to have a sense for where everyone's supposed to be and throws it well enough. It's just still a super young guy. After a year, you're right, especially if he plays well in preseason, that especially after that, he could end up being a backup in the league. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of one of those things where, well, they want an experienced backup, but how do you get experience if you're not playing, sort of thing? If they feel good about him at the end of this training camp, then there is a chance he could be a backup going forward. I like where he's at right now, except for a couple of plays over the last couple of days. You're always going to have a couple plays, but there was one just kind of real bad interception. Traveler, how do you feel good about JJ so far? More good than bad. Still more good than bad. Definitely more good than bad. And that's exactly why we're talking about it the way that we're talking about it, is because I don't want so much of the focus to be on a couple of plays and, some, mistakes that got made, some sacks that happened, to mislead and make you think that it's just been this horrible training camp for JJ McCarthy. If I take all 7 days, and I recorded a conversation for tomorrow with Dane Mizutani out there at TCO Performance Center, we were talking about this. Like, if we take all 7 days, the accumulation, I think it's on track. I'm sure that there are some people who are watching practice and going, I don't know, doesn't look so good. And we just have to try to keep the context of this thing like in our in our mind as we're having the discussion that he came to practice looking pretty prepared and had a good first couple of days, and then had one great day, then had one really good day that ended badly, and then has had back-to-back days that were kind of tough, but were not horrendous. And now we go from here on to the next phase. I think after this, like if we break training camp up into phases, it's, before they get the pads on, the pads come on, but it's early. And then after this little break here, and you're leading up to that first preseason game, all of a sudden now it's not early anymore. And now you expect to see more consistency from a day to day and a play to play basis from McCarthy. There's nothing. So, just for example, one of the metrics I've been using to explain how I feel about McCarthy is my confidence that they will win 11 games. And I don't know where I put it the other day. I think I put it at, I don't know, 80% confident. Yeah, I am not moved. I'm not moved. I think this team can be led by JJ McCarthy to double digit wins. I am not thrown off my confidence rating by a couple of practices where he wasn't as accurate. I do think when we get into the season, there will be some times and some throws and some quarters where a lot of us are going, "Ooh, that was a tough, ugly throw, ugly quarter, missed a chance there." And it's not going to be perfect because this is still a young quarterback. But I also think that you're seeing him gain chemistry with Jalen Naylor. He had a great throw to TJ Hawkinson today, had another one yesterday, starting to get it with Hawkinson. And you're also going to see game planning at that point. They're not game planning, they're putting in their base stuff right now. And then the game planning is going to come later. And that's where you have KOC's opening script, and it's something they could practice all week. This is the phase where they are just getting comfortable with everything that is on the menu. So you try to learn the whole menu. And then for a game, you pare it down to the things that you like the most. They're still trying to get the whole menu down. And here's Flores over here when his guys have the whole menu and you don't, as JJ McCarthy, you don't have it locked in completely yet. Matt says, how do Hargrave and Allen look? Feels like we've just gotten the generic D-line is looking great. Notes from the beat guy. Well, they are. I mean, the whole defensive line. I mean, Jonathan Grenard and Dallas Turner have been the ones, and Van Ginkel today, that have been the easiest to see. Kind of speaks to my Donovan Jackson point, where you get the defensive tackles and guards and centers, and it is a little tough without the benefit of all 22 film to say, oh, that was, Allen did this move on that play over Donovan Jackson. Like, it's a little bit difficult. I think on the whole, though, the answer for how they look is just great. The whole D-line looks great. I mean, they're in the backfield a lot. So this is like, well, maybe against the run, they haven't been as strong, but also the Vikings have a really good run interior now, and they did not in the past. They look like they are a great fit for what they want to do to create pressure. And, somebody like Jonathan Allen has such a long history of this, but Javon Hargrave might be the most underrated signing around the NFL. If I'm going to circle one of them, I just see Hargrave all the time making plays and getting push and getting in the backfield and getting an edge on somebody. And he just looks really good to me. So both have been good, though. It's a really nasty D-line overall. How about nose? As I thought Taki looked really good against the run last year. Of course, the injury limited the data set, but I wonder how he's looking so far. Not getting a ton of reps. I did see him in there today in the red zone drill where they could be in a handoff type of situation. He may make the team based on that. I think it's going to be hard for him to make the team, though, because you have kind of clones of each guy that's in front. As a backup, you have a Jalen Redmond, who's kind of like your Javon Hargrave clone. You got, I think, your Harrison Phillips type of clone, and Levi Drake Rodriguez, and then Tyrion Ingram Dawkins to maybe be a Jonathan Allen type. Do they really want another guy in there who is so one-dimensional as just a run stopper and a gap holder? I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of evidence that makes me think yes in terms of rep count. That could change. They might feel like it. Yeah, they really might feel like they have to have at least one of those guys, and Tyamani might be that, but I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. Trent says, enjoyed Matt Daniels' interview today. He had glowing things to say about Felton, basically confirmed he's Naylor's replacement. Yeah, more or less, he said they're similar. He didn't say exactly that he's the replacement, but said that they're similar. Also, the Deshaun Jackson comparison to Rodgers. So when it comes to that, that was something, I don't know if I brought this up or not. But when it came to Matt Daniels, it sounds to me like he is fighting the fight when it comes to trying to sell Kevin O'Connell on using Isaiah Rodgers as his kick returner. It's clear Isaiah Rodgers is the best kick returner on the team. He's also the number 2 corner. I do not like the idea of the number 2 starting corner having to return kicks in a league where now the kick return is pretty physical on the returner. You are running full speed into people who are kind of set up in a wall. It's always a tough play on the returner, but that's really tough sometimes. You see some of the collisions that returners face. I don't want any part of that. The Deshaun Jackson point is just that, let's say you're down 7 points with a minute to go and you're getting a kickoff. You just gave up the lead, you're getting a kickoff. Okay. Kind of how in 99, Randy Moss was used as a punt returner. And I don't think he was ever used as a punt returner ever again after 99, but they did it in some games. I wrote about the game against Kansas City where Moss returned one for a touchdown. They just threw him into the game. I think they had a punt returner hurt and he just, all right, try to go win us the game. And he tied it with an amazing punt return. They kind of want the same thing. Like you don't have Deshaun Jackson returning kicks or punts all the time, but hey, you need to bring one back. Like, let's go for it. So I think that's more along the lines of what he's thinking, or maybe the compromise of how badly Matt Daniels wants Isaiah Rodgers to be the returner. Jack's Pack off topic. Will Jeremiah Searles be on the show? He will. Yes, he will during the regular season. I do not try to bother Searles too much during the summer, every once in a while, but he puts in a lot of hours on this show during the regular season that I appreciate. So yes, he will be back. Also, thank you, Traveler, for the $20 super chat. Really appreciate that. Apparently, you just found the channel, so thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell all of your friends. But thank you. Now I've just gotten to the point in the chat where the dog unhooked the microphone, and I really do appreciate you guys and your patience. Here's how I know that you guys care is even as I was chasing down which wire got pulled by the dog, cut to the guitar solo is very funny. You guys started making jokes rather than leaving, assuming that I would get it figured out. So I think that I was an RA dropped in 5 for Buddy. So I really do. That is the nicest thing you guys could do for me, is not all just immediately close out the window instantly. Forget the questions. We want Buddy. I know. Yeah, Buddy's been laying here looking a little sad for the last probably 20 minutes, knowing that he screwed up the live stream. But it's okay. It's okay. All right, we'll get some more questions going, and then it's a day off. And just a reminder that on the day off there will be my conversation from TCO today with Dane Mizutani. The content stream never stops here, my friends. And also over at purpleinsider.football is where you can get the newsletter. And I'm going to write over the next couple of days about my sit-down conversation with Rondale Moore and what he had to tell me about his recovery and learning to be a complete wide receiver when he was in Arizona and all those sorts of things. So that was a really good conversation that I had with Rondale Moore today. And just a little bit of insight there is I wondered about his chip on his shoulder because he's such a undersized player. But what I heard from him is a very, very positive attitude about his career. And he just feels like he's got a great opportunity in Minnesota. And I think that if I was doing a 53 today, I would have him on the team starting as the punt returner. And then as he might still be that guy who steps up into the wide receiver 3 role rather than Lucky Jackson. I would guess that they want that to happen, and Moore just needs to fully understand the offense. He was telling me, I asked him, I said, hey, describe to me what you see as an NFL wide receiver that's different about KOC's offense. Like, I think I know, but you tell me. And not to ruin the future article, but he said that the amount of movement pre-snap, it's a lot of work for the wide receivers to fully get it and the quarterback, but it helps a lot. And it really, really makes life difficult on the defense. So that, he said, was something he's still getting used to. Jeffrey, could you see Rippon being cut and made an assistant QB coach? Yeah, I mean, it has happened before. Wasn't that kind of a Sean Mannion thing? Um, I think that he's probably going to be cut and put on the practice squad if Brosmer plays well and plays well in the preseason games. We're still a little far away from that, declaring that Brosmer is the guy, but Brosmer getting the 11 on 11 reps, it shows you at least that they're interested in seeing more of him as QB4, because I can't think of too many times that I saw QB4s getting a lot of reps in 11 on 11. So Brosmer's gotten a decent amount considering how much are going to QB1 and QB2. So at this moment, I would have Brosmer on the roster and Rippon as a member of the practice squad. Just can't really see Rippon getting picked up by anyone. Evan shouting out the Lynx. How about the Lynx? I assume that they won. Yeah, my wife does the radio broadcast these days, so get that Lynx app. But I guess they must have won tonight. I will have to get the full recap from her when she gets home. But yeah, look, this is this time of year. We got to do a live show after every single practice. It's too fun. Should you go to Friday or Saturday's practice, Ryan? I would say whichever one has better weather is probably the better choice, because if they have to go inside, you're just out of luck. I think Friday is going to be a pretty serious practice, though. If you're trying to identify what's going to be the more serious practice, coming out of an off day is usually shot out of a cannon. Going in and coming out of the off days are usually big, but after they have a really serious practice, then they usually take a notch back. So Saturday might be a notch back type of day. Son of a Beavers says, I wonder if the Vikings trade for Thielen during the preseason. That I would be surprised by. Although, just looking a little bit at Carolina, Hunter Renfrow seems to have stepped up for them. They've got some young wide receivers, Tet McMillan. Like, could Adam Thielen look? We love to do this. We love to do the, hey, bring back whoever who used to be here. Bring back Marcus Sherrills to punt return, or Tom Johnson from Seattle, or Randy Moss from the Patriots. Like, we love to do that. Brad Johnson came back for a second stint. I think, did Gus Farrat have a second stint with this team? Like, we've done it over the years quite a bit with that guy. I don't know about Adam Thielen. This is his home, Minnesota. If you guys didn't know that, crazy story, actually. Detroit Lakes. There is some sense to it a little bit, but not really. I mean, because even if Jordan Addison gets suspended, you're only talking 2 to 3 games. And then you're going to have Jalen Naylor back in. Now, if there was a Jalen Naylor injury, a Jordan Addison longer term or something like that, then you would have to consider looking at other potential options at wide receiver. And Thielen could still play. I would also say the other thing that's a concern would just be Thielen's health over the last couple of years hasn't really been ideal. He's had nicks and cuts and has missed some games. I know that everybody wants that, but we'll see about whether he gets traded or just stays with Carolina. Because if I'm the Panthers, I think I would just keep Adam Thielen. You've got a young quarterback that you're trying to get to take the next step. I think you want to have Adam Thielen, a veteran wide receiver, around. Anthony, always curious how much weight this team places on roles for special teams when deciding which players to keep. Like, do they keep Tim Jones over just Sean Jones, even if he's not the better wide receiver? No, they do. Yeah, no, they definitely do. Because that depth wide receiver position becomes a gunner a lot of times. And as much as the gunner is boring, if you don't have one who could do his job, actually at the beginning of last year, before they put Trent Sherfield in, it was a nightmare. It was going horribly with the punt gunner. And you only notice it. What do they say that about, like, offensive linemen? Well, punt gunners too. You only really notice it if it's going terribly. And it was last year for a bit until they replaced the punt gunner with, I forget who it was supposed to be. Was it like a Caleb Evans or somebody? I think it was. and then they ultimately released him, if I'm remembering correctly. So it does matter, yes. And they may keep Tim Jones. Another part of it is that if you have a guy who's a proven gunner or something, some team might pick him up who doesn't like their guy if you cut him. Whereas Jashawn Jones, I think it's actually pronounced Jashawn Jones. I've been asking around. Jashawn Jones. If you cut him, it's pretty likely he gets to the practice squad, and then you've still got him. And I remember last year we had all these debates about, do they keep this guy or that guy? And what if they cut this guy? Who will pick them up? And I think every guy that fans wanted to stay on the team stayed on the team on the practice squad, like every single guy. Bo Richter was one of them. That people loved Bo Richter, and I still like Bo Richter's outlook. And it was like, wait, he had a really good preseason. What happened? But no one was going to pick up somebody who was one of the last signed undrafted free agents out there, and then turned out to be an NFL player. But usually you can get a guy like Jashawn Jones onto the practice squad. That's going to be a consideration as well. Ryan says, should we be more scared of the Lions or Commanders during our Super Bowl window? Going forward, I think the team with the better outlook for the future 5 years is the Commanders. The Detroit Lions, it's amazing how quick the windows come and go. Because I think that the Detroit Lions are really on their last legs here for their Super Bowl window. And it's very possible that they could have missed it based on the offensive line. That this is the last year or two of this, and then everyone becomes so expensive and players get banged up as they've already seen, and that you don't have all the draft capital. And one of the ways that they built that team, Brad Holmes is a genius. He also had 50 million picks because they tanked. So that helped, but now they're having to pay all those picks. And Jared Goff, not getting younger. We'll see about if their offensive line comes together. They lost their coordinators. It is very possible that they missed their best shot over the last 2 years. So I would say the Commanders, because the world is wide open for them. I mean, they have 3 more years of a rookie contract after this year for Jaden Daniels, who's already looking like an elite quarterback. And then you can usually stretch it out on a contract extension to 6 years of having a reasonable cap hit. And if he's as good as he looks, like an MVP type of candidate, yeah, that's going to be a little more consistent year to year than someone like Jared Goff, who is, as much as respect as I have for him, it is dictated from Jared Goff on what's around him. Purple Tears since 61 says, be scared when we face the Rams for the NFC Championship game. Be more scared when we face Buffalo for the Super Bowl. All possible. All possible. The way that they built the team was to have a chance to face any type of other team. Last year, as we were going down the stretch, I remember feeling like the one team that they shouldn't want to play, and that I was saying, watch out for, it was probably the Rams, because they had gotten hot. They had gotten Nakua back. Their D-line was developing. And we knew that the Vikings couldn't handle a nasty D-line, especially after the Lions debacle. We knew that. Now they're trying to get to a point where they have a good enough offensive line, a good enough running game, enough weapons, enough of a defense to match up. So maybe Sam Darnold has that same game, but you find a way to win anyway, because you caused turnovers. And I still wonder, I don't know. I watched that game back several times, call it, in the offseason. I still wonder, there was a fumble in there that I think Blake Cashman either caused or picked up that was ruled not a fumble, that I wondered how it would have changed the game. But you might have to win a knockdown, drag out 10-7 playoff game, and then the quarterback gets a QB win for a playoff game. But you might have to play that type of game against the Rams if you face them again. And I do think Buffalo has a great shot to make the Super Bowl. That's going to be my pick, I think, for the Super Bowl. Trent says, I have a concern that we're giving too much credit to the interior D-line and not harsh enough on the interior O-line. Time will tell. The O-line needs to gel. And Darisaw back today. Well, you do have a rookie at left guard who's playing for the first time, and he's got to go up against superstars. That's hard to do. The other point is that a lot of the pressure has come from Jonathan Grenard and Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel, because one, they're facing Justin School. Van Ginkel had a couple of pressures against Brian O'Neill. It's not concerning about O'Neill, but just speaks to how good that Andrew Van Ginkel is. And Turner's been blitzing a lot. And part of him looking great is also playing with the second team defense as well. But they've taken advantage of the fact, the defense, that School is not in there and that Jackson is a rookie. And, Ryan Kelly is probably trying to teach on the fly here, and McCarthy trying to figure it out. It's not just the D line beating people, it's also a lot of the different looks that they're facing as well. And that matters quite a bit. That matters a lot, that they're showing all these different rushes early here in camp. And I think that that's for McCarthy to be able to sort through and to learn about what the different identifying things that he's supposed to see are. But Flores gets everybody with some of this stuff. So there's a little bit of, you want to make it hard. So think about it. I'm always reaching for golf analogies. Like, you want to play a course that's hard because you want to get better that way. But do you want to play Augusta? Like, probably not, if you're still learning how to be a golfer. Like, you want to get out on a course where there's 500-yard holes, but I don't think you want to play 650-yard holes like the pros do. And it feels a little bit of that way here, where it's like, yeah, the best quarterbacks in the league struggle with some of this stuff from Flores, but do you really want to show them all of it right away? And I can imagine KOC sitting in his office watching some of the tape being like, okay, Brian, we get it. And that's why you do have to do some of the ones versus twos. Not sure how to pronounce it. And if I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize. But that's why I put it on the screen. Ave 24. I think once McCarthy gets it down, he'll be better than Bridgewater. Not apples to apples. Not apples to apples. When Bridgewater arrived, in fact, it couldn't be more different. When Bridgewater arrived, this organization was on fire. It was a mess in 2014 when Zimmer got here. That's why Zimmer will always deserve credit. I mean, he turned the franchise around from a complete and utter disaster to an NFC championship game and then a playoff win 2 years later. I mean, that was a lot had to go into that. And a lot of it was within the wide receivers, which, they developed Diggs and Thielen from a 5th round pick and undrafted, but Teddy Bridgewater didn't have those guys. I mean, they were on the team in 15, but he never had the full versions of Thielen and Diggs, who it took until 16 and 17, where those guys really became superstars and developed. There was that. Also, it was Norv Turner's offense. They were still running Adrian Peterson all the time. He was truly game managing his way to not turn the ball over, and every once in a while, hit an intermediate pass, throw with some anticipation, lead the offense. But it was not anything like this. I mean, and it was 10 years ago as well. We've advanced offensively a lot over the last 10 years. But even then, I think the comparison is just that if there are ups and downs as a young quarterback, and I think McCarthy could be better, but we also don't know what Bridgewater would have become. As Bridgewater was going into 16, he looked really, really good. And then, look, if he had gotten to 17 with the roster they had and more money, he might have gone to the same place that Case Keenum got them. So, it's always going to be a what could Teddy Bridgewater could have become. I'm kind of the mind that it would have been a lot better than what you saw just when he was a second-year quarterback. But McCarthy is in a much different spot. Now, Bridgewater was able to win the division, but McCarthy is now in a position of everything around you is great. Every single position is loaded with veterans and stars and things like that. I mean, you just have to do your job, and you just have to not turn the ball over and make bad mistakes like he did a couple times today. You can't have an interception when you're in position to potentially kick a field goal by just whipping it up into the end zone. And they are going to have a run game to play off, and they are going to have a defense to play off, and they're going to have receivers that are open. Like, do your job, make a couple of great plays a game and great throws a game, and you can win. That's where you're at right now. And then after week 6, after week 8, like start to really lock in and start to really get it and start really playing real quarterback, like what we saw from CJ Stroud or Jaden Daniels, like turn a corner, Bo Nix, turn a corner. That's what they're looking for here. The Bridgewater situation was just so wildly different, especially with a coach who did not want to pass at all, ever, which is maybe why he loved Teddy Bridgewater. Trent says, am I crazy to go top Vikings 5 stack in fantasy dynasty? I have JJ, Jets, Jordan Addison, the defense about to trade for Hawkinson. The bye week will kill me. Fantasy philosophy is not my expertise, but I think that there is a case for all of those guys. And Hawkinson is the one I'm really keeping my eye on. So if you're trading for Hawkinson, that makes a lot of sense to make a trade for TJ Hawkinson. He's going to be the guy that McCarthy looks to when everything is breaking down. Expose. Sorry, I did not read it correctly earlier. I spell it out when I'm not 100% sure at first. How many reps in preseason do you expect McCarthy to get? Do you think he only plays in game 1? I think that he only plays in the first game and will not play after. History would tell us that. That's what Sam Darnold did. I could also see if they're not totally loving what they're seeing in training camp, if they are not completely good and sold and all set with training camp, that they would put him in a second preseason game. It will not be the third. I think the third when the joint practices. I got to look at my schedule. I think the third's when the joint practices. That will act as a preseason game. I would expect it's one series and then JJ is out and that's it. And they're going to go about it and treat him the same way they did Sam Darnold, but it might depend on where he's at. I mean, they might feel like he needs a little bit more than 1 or 2 series. Might feel like that. So, Ave24 says it was a training camp for Bridgewater and McCarthy. I think McCarthy handles pressure better. Well, I mean, Bridgewater won real games. And we haven't seen McCarthy in real pressure situations yet. And I don't know. He hasn't handled pressure real good the last couple of days. I just think it's not a discussion you can really have. I think it's just it's 10 years difference. It's 2 very different quarterbacks on very different offenses. KOC with Teddy Bridgewater, Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson. I mean, that's an offensive line that's highly paid and good. I mean, but McCarthy's got so much more. I would say when Bridgewater came into the league, he probably had a bottom 5 supporting cast. This is a top 3 supporting cast. So it's different. It's just a lot different than it was then. And I think that there's a lot of people who try to kind of, anytime anyone ever brings up Bridgewater, you run to the front of the line to be like, he wasn't that good. And I don't understand that. I mean, Bridgewater got you a division title, should have won a playoff game, got screwed by a kicker, was a great leader for the team, was ascending. Hard worker. You can't ask for a better person. So, I don't know. I don't know why some people feel that need to kind of like get out there and bang the drum from 10 years ago. I don't really understand that. I mean, I just think they're 2 very different quarterbacks where Bridgewater was accurate and had great anticipation, but didn't have a strong arm. And McCarthy has a really strong arm, but is working on the accuracy and anticipation. And the expectations are different. If Teddy Bridgewater had won, 8 games in 2015 and played pretty well, they might have thought it was good, but he gets 11. They have a great defense. They were a little ahead of schedule in where he was. And then that group was clearly ascending to the point where, maybe they could have been great by 16 and 17. It just didn't happen. RA says we signed Gervarius Owens today. Do we expect any other signings in the coming weeks? Was it a signing out of right field? I don't know who Gervarius Owens is. I mean, I saw the email. I was just expecting that he was another camp person to bring in to just fill in a spot. So, I don't know. They do bottom of the roster stuff all the time with just need one more guy for special teams or something like that. And if he starts to get actual reps, then, okay, wow, okay, who is this guy or whatever. But yeah, I mean, they're going to swap in, hey, you got an injury there, you got something there. Guys will swap in and out, but it's the ultimate kind of camp body type of situation for that, I think. Matt says, I don't care how Okuda looks. They don't have depth to lose Rodgers on special teams. Yeah, I agree with that. Um, I totally agree with that. It's too risky to put him back there to return kicks for him to take a big hit and for him to end up, out for 6 weeks or something because someone falls on his leg. I mean, come on. You just don't need that. How about no says any word on Darisaw's progress other than that he practiced today with 11 on 11s? No, I mean, he looked good though. He looked like he is going to need some work, but and didn't take the full amount of practice reps, but a big step forward for him in his return was getting out there today. So definitely a big deal. RB3 leader is clearly Ty Chandler. I don't think it's any sort of competition. I like how Xavier Scott looks. Haven't seen a ton of Trey Stewart, but I like how Xavier Scott catches the football. He's not taking Ty Chandler's job. Ty Chandler is blazing fast and has played in the NFL a lot. And even if there are some frustrations with him, still a guy that if you had to put in for a game to play starting running back, you'd be fine with it. If you had to do that, like, you can do it. He's been in this offense. You just try to maybe protect him, but he's done it before. He's shown he can do it. I think he just frustrates Kevin O'Connell and doesn't have his trust, but he's definitely got the talent. He's looked really good so far at camp, I think. 2-dog dad. I'm just a 1-dog dad at the moment. Just a dad of the dog. That's it. Put odds on a Vikings Panthers playoff game. Hey, I could see the Panthers. That's my pick for coach of the year, Dave Canales, because I think that the Panthers could make the playoffs. And if you watched Bryce Young in the second half of last year, he took a step forward big time. And the stats weren't amazing, but he was making plays and their offense was in games and they almost won a couple of that. Even with the worst defense in the NFL, they were right in there. So I think that they could take a big step forward. They could win a wild card spot or maybe that division if the Bucks take a step back or somebody gets hurt. I could see it. Gunner Mike, does anyone know if the suspension will be the first 3 games or sometime later in the season? Ask the commissioner. He's the only one that would have an idea of that right now. I still expect them to have the first 3 games without Jordan Addison. It just makes sense that the case has been resolved. You've got your answer. Now hand down the suspension. Like, go ahead. But they haven't announced it yet. And with what happened in the NFL offices, I think that might cause a delay in some things, not to be callous, but just a fact of the matter with a shooting there. I can't imagine what those people were going through. And it is probably really difficult to just get back to like, oh yeah, we've got this horrendous, awful tragedy in that building. And then, but what about Jordan Addison's suspension? So it might be some time before we get our answer. I was assuming that it was going to be the very beginning of the season, but just with suspensions in the past, there's been no true rhyme or reason of when those drop after a ruling or something like that. Hamza says, I find it hard to believe that Darisaw won't start week 1. It looks like he was already practicing in team drills. Right. And we're still 40 days away. The ACLs, it's not just recovering with your leg. It's getting the full body ready to go and play an actual NFL game. So I don't want to be definitive about it and sit here and say, good to go, all set, when it might be week 2 as opposed to week 1. It might be week 3, because with someone like that, you got to feel like 100% that he's good to go. The same way they're taking their time with Justin Jefferson, they need to take their time with Christian Darisaw. If that means 1 week where he's out, well, that means 1 week where he's out. Because you need him for an entire season, not just, hey, let's get him back by week 1, but then he's not able to hold up for 17 or this happened a little bit with Delvin Cook when he was coming back from the ACL. And I think they pushed a little too hard early in training camp. He had like that 80-yard touchdown run or 75-yard touchdown run in preseason, but then he ends up hurting his hamstring, and there's connected type of injuries. I think caution is always the thing. It's a huge step. It's an enormous step. They can't win anything without Christian Darrisaw. I think that's very clear. They could survive some games as they did with Cam Robinson, but they can't win anything without him deep into the stretch against the best teams in the league and best pass rushers. So you got to have them, and taking it slow is the way to do it. Hamza says the JJ McCarthy discourse is reminding me a lot of the Jalen Hurts discourse right now. People discrediting Hurts like they were JJ because of the run heavy offense. I'm not seeing it, that comparison. I think if you're making a comparison, it would probably be this, that Jalen Hurts is not the most accurate, flawless pocket quarterback in the NFL. That he's not a guy that threw for 4,500 yards last year and they stick him in the shotgun and he just fires it all over the place like Joe Burrow, different type of quarterback. But if he can play to the situation and the offense he has, and this is why I always give Jalen Hurts all the credit he deserves. Super Bowl champion quarterback who earned it. I mean, he was huge in the Super Bowl, but he also, like, if you play, you shouldn't be penalized for playing the way that win games. And in the NFL, it is impossible to win the Super Bowl. Who knows this better than you guys? So if somebody goes into a game and runs for 100 yards as a quarterback and passes for 150 yards and they win, like, I'm not going to say, oh, well, he didn't do it right or something. And that could be what happens with JJ McCarthy, where maybe it is only 200 yards a game and maybe there is some game managing and maybe it is run the football a little bit more. I haven't thought that, but maybe it is with the defense that they have. And if you win by doing that, you apologize to nobody. This is not fantasy. This is like find a way to win the game. And there's going to have to be some find a way to win the game in JJ McCarthy this year. And there was, when we're talking about Teddy, it's what I always respected about Teddy. It wasn't always perfect, but sometimes you just had to find a way to win. And that's what McCarthy's going to have to do to get through some of these bumps. I think what we're seeing in practice is like, look, it's not going to be perfect. And Jalen Hurts isn't perfect. And Jared Goff isn't perfect. And then Brock Purdy isn't perfect. And a lot of other quarterbacks who win. So you're going to have to find ways to lean on the supporting cast, lean on the receivers, lean on the defense sometimes, lean on the run game. And it's on KOC as well to guide him through that. And also it's on KOC to understand what you do have to dial back. And that might just be details. That might be motions. It might be pre-snap stuff, whatever it is. But you're going to have to figure that out as we go along. Josh, is JJ looking defeated by the defense in the last 2 days or so? I heard the D is dominating. So do we need to worry about his confidence? Not right now. I think that today there were a little bit of maybe a little more slumped shoulders. I think he's a really confident guy. And I think he really believes in himself. And he knows that what was the saying, the progress is the process or something, or whatever it was. I think he's always thinking in terms, we heard him say this today, of lessons from your failures. And when a mistake is made, then you go back and you figure out what happened and you grow from it. And there's a lot of growth type of moments here in these first couple of days that haven't gone well. And over the next few practices, that's where you want to see him learn. And at every step of the way, McCarthy has learned and grown. And that's why he's the starting quarterback and not Sam Darnold this year, or not Aaron Rodgers, because they believed in his ability to learn from mistakes and grow from them. So now it's a test. It's been a couple of practices that have not been ideal. Now it's a big test, and we'll see where it goes. And of course, I will be there, but I won't be tomorrow because there's no practice. So keep your eyes out for a podcast I recorded with Dane Mizutani yesterday. I am thrilled about these epic conversations that we're having, the live streaming. I know there's always, some people in the comments who are like, it's too long. Like, well, you guys dictate that with all your great questions. And even the dog couldn't get me to stop, but I think I do have to take him out now, probably. So thank you all for another awesome conversation tonight. Glad we got it back on the rails after the doggy faux pas, but maybe I got to put up a little doggy fence or something to block in my microphones and wires and stuff like that, so nobody gets hurt. But thank you so much again for great conversations and being rational, but having great questions and everything else for all the live streams this week. And there will be another one Friday night and beyond. Every training camp practice they have, I will be here to answer your questions and take you through the sound of the day, some of the sights of the day, and what's going on out at TCO Performance Center. So thank you. And to those of you who I see in the comments at the start and at the end, you guys are unbelievable. And I appreciate you so much. PurpleInsider.football. Sign up for that newsletter if you haven't already. Got to go write it now. Take care, everybody. Football.